No, appreciate putting this on, Felix. This has been a lot of fun. You're a very good conversationalist. I think that this will be a very exciting podcast to follow along with. You got a new subscriber.
Imagine a life fueled by endless curiosity where learning feels like an adventure and every experience is a chance to grow. That's the world of Spencer Cox, a man who went from tinkering with tools as a kid to coaching successful businesses as an adult, all thanks to his insatiable fire of curiosity. Hello again, and welcome back to In Search of 42. This is my attempt to find the answer to life, the universe, and everything. Perhaps the answer is 42, as Douglas Adams proposed. And if so, I would like to know. Now, Spencer has an incredible story, including an epic motorcycle trip that completely transformed his life. You will hear all about it during our conversation and how it changed his life. In the meantime, don't forget to like and subscribe and share this episode with a friend. Also, don't forget to reach out to either Spencer or myself if either one of us seems like the right person to help you with your life right now. You will hear all about what Spencer does in the episode. And on that note, let's get right into my conversation with Spencer Cox. All right, Spencer, so nice to see you, so nice to connect with you. Thank you for being here. I'm really looking forward to this conversation, but let's get right into it. Who are you?
Of course. Hey, I'm Spencer. Yeah, who am I? I am a curious adventurer, always excited about doing more, bigger, better things. Passionate about travel, passionate about fitness, passionate about efficiency and making things simple. I like understanding the world. I think that we've got a great ability to overcomplicate things, and taking a step back, looking at things in first principles and understanding what the essence of things are, makes the world a simpler and happier place.
Yeah. Oh, that speaking my language here. I love it. That's so awesome. How did you get to be this kind of person?
Oh boy. Yeah, my parents definitely instilled. So I'm son of an engineer, father. He's I don't know about what other people had experience with their fathers, but mine always had he always knew answers to my questions. Like I could just ask anything and he'd have an answer. Like I'd be in the car and be like, Dad, how does sound work? And he'd just like answer it and I'd be like, oh, okay, cool. I don't know if I could, I mean, I'm not a dad yet, but I don't know if I could do that. But like any question, like, Dad, how do underwater cables work? Um, and he just have those. Like I think I could just having that instant access to an answer. Um, and he never got tired of answering why or how or what. Um, Instilled in me an ability just to keep on asking questions and be curious. And I think that that translates to a beginner's mindset, which is a term thrown around a lot, but I just take it as like you could always consider yourself in a learning mode and always consider the world a thing that you can understand more deeply. And instilling that from a young age has been something that's I've kept with me.
Yeah, I think what really shines through is that even from a young age, you had that curiosity to ask questions and truly understand how something works. I mean, that's so sort of like nature to you. That's not nurtured, right? I mean, obviously, your parents nurtured that and fostered that by answering your questions and helping you go deeper on all these different concepts. And you brought up the why game. I love playing the why game with my kids because every time they ask me why, I'm like, all right, now I have to go a little deeper and dig a little deeper. Whereas I feel like when I was growing up, the why game was just a nuisance. It was like, stop asking questions. I don't want to answer anymore. And I love that, right? They truly nurtured that inquisitive nature inside of you.
Totally. Yeah, how do you navigate the why game with your kids? What does that look like? Like how deep do you go until you realize you're being trolled, or is it always an opportunity to explain the world?
My kids are naturally curious. I think my youngest especially has some of that trolling personality, and she will try to push me sometimes. But she really wants to know how things work, and she's 6 years old. So, for example, last night she got a pretty good cut. And what I ended up doing with her to try to help her through all that was actually explain to her the stages of wound healing. I'm a doctor by background, so I explained to her the stages of wound healing, and she didn't stop there. She was now trying to figure out how do you move from stage one to stage two to stage three to stage four, and she was really just trying to figure out how things work. And what's really interesting, I honestly, to me, that was just natural, right? Just how things go. I honestly, that's just how my kids are. It's how I am. I didn't really make any sense of it. It didn't strike me as anything unusual, I should say. Um, but so last weekend, my youngest, again, my 6 year old, was turning on Netflix, and she was watching the show, the science show on various like science experiments that you could do at home, and she's just so fascinated by it. She's like, "Daddy, they showed me how to make a tornado in a bottle." And my girlfriend comes from a different background. She's a counselor, so she's more on the intuitive side of things, just human interactions. And she's like, "Of course, your kid would watch a Netflix science show instead of like Bluey or something else." And it right at that point, I was like, "Huh, okay, all right. So maybe this is not how the world works. Maybe that's just how my kid works." But so yeah, it's just but yeah. So with the Y game, I think for the most part, can she be trolling? Absolutely. But for the most part, she really wants to understand things, just like you are. And just like your parents, I'm trying to nurture that, because taking that into our life as a whole, right, as adults. I mean, one thing you said that really struck a chord within me was, what I have found with my learning is the more I learn, the less I know. And coming to that realization that there's so many things that I don't know about, but that I could learn more about, really opened my eyes to a very different way of living. So, what do you think? Where do you think we lose that? Right, because kids are, I think, naturally inquisitive. They ask why questions. They want to know how the world works. But most adults lose that. So we lose that along the way. Why, and how do you think that happens?
Yeah, I imagine that there's a balancing act between learning and doing. And I think that as we get older, the doing becomes more important. So, like, there's a certain point where you need to learn about what you're doing before you start, but there is just taking action and doing it as well. Um, we increasingly need to start doing to put bread on the table, to earning income, to satisfy our clients, to keep our job, whatever motivation you increasingly need to do. And when that happens, perhaps the need to do that pulls you away from actually being as curious and asking more questions. And it reframes as like an up level or like upskill or creating more ability to earn. But ultimately, like we seem to change the KPI from learning to doing. And is that a good thing? I mean, it's productive. It doesn't necessarily lend itself to doing to broadening our knowledge, but I think also with the greater surface area of knowledge. Like you said, the more the more you learn you don't know. Um, I think that when you just go down that far enough, you're like, okay, I can't learn everything. So it's time to start like going ahead and pushing through with this one little column that I do know and turning it into knowledge. But it's not something I've thought about a lot. How do you see this play out?
I don't know. I mean, we all have different paths in life, and we all have different experiences. And I think one thing you mentioned, that going from learning to doing, we all need to do that. And there's definitely benefit to just doing, right? To take action and utilize the knowledge that we have, instead of being hung up on the idea, I don't know enough yet to do something, right? I mean, I think people are just maybe missing a piece of confidence, because everything, you know enough to do stuff, but yet you're not doing it because you think you still need to learn more. I think the piece that's missing, if anything, is maybe a bit of confidence. But they're also, it's almost like it should be an ongoing cycle, right? You need to do, which makes you learn something else, which then makes you do better, which then makes you learn something else and makes you do better, and so on and so forth. But if you're constantly just stuck on the cycle of, I have to go to work to make money, I have to have a job, I have to clean the house, without ever learning how to do things better, more efficiently, like you said, or even growing as a person, right? Learning about other people, learning about how the world works. You're missing out on a huge part of life. I mean, life is a lifelong school. I mean, my kid was telling me the other day, my oldest, my 10-year old, she was kind of saying, oh, and she's in fourth grade now, so she's like, well, in 8 years I'll be done with school. I'm like, honestly, you're never done with school. Yeah, sure, you may not be in a building with other kids with a whiteboard or a smart board or whatever they use these days, but you're still going to be learning.
Well, there's also, I think that it's important categorization of skills as There's the skills of doing things. There's how to surf a wave. There's how to assemble a car from a series of parts. There's how to write a piece of marketing copy. These are skills that can be learned and taught. And then there's skills that can actually be taught, but they can be learned. And these are kind of more meta skills. These are the skills that help you learn other skills. This is becoming proficient and enjoying reading. This is how to break down a problem into its parts and determine which series of steps are most important to take. This is analyzing a situation and creating actionable insight on how you might improve it. So the meta skills are the foundational ones that you never like the most important ones to be learning because they improve your learning of everything else. So I think when it comes to learning specific things to aid me in specific actions, that gets old. Not doesn't that get old? Sorry, that becomes a rabbit hole that never stops. That can produce diminishing returns. You can learn all you want about the way that the climate works, and you can be super curious about it. But at a certain point, you're happy with it. However, it's always a good use of time to learn how to learn, to become better at knowledge retention and knowledge gaining, as well as being able to break down a problem. For example, um, this year I was like having to. I'm really deciding that personal branding is an area I want to focus more on. I've just been building in the trenches, doing a lot of like private things and succeeding at it, but understanding now that personal brand is a really big importance. Um, Before I would have approached the problem a lot differently. Before I would have been like, okay, I need to do all these different courses, I need to do these programs, I need to do these, need to watch these YouTube videos from different gurus or whatever. Whereas now I'm just breaking it down from like first principles of like, what do I know about this? What do I not know about this? And what do I need to understand? Just like what the thing is more. And that's been able to create a much better plan than previous me, which would have just like dove headfirst into like learning things without a plan. So definitely, I think an important distinction of breaking down meta skills and like skills.
Yeah, I like that a lot. So I'm just curious, just about you and how did you do in school? Did you go to a public school and how did or did you go to a different type of school or was your curious and inquisitive nature fostered? And the reason I ask is I've seen it a lot, and I see it a lot because my girlfriend is a middle school counselor. That kids are more and more just taught, no, this is what you need to know, don't ask any questions, instead of saying, oh, well, you have a question, you want to learn more about it, well, let's talk about a bit. So like, what was your experience like then going through the school system?
Normal. Yeah, went to public school, went to a average university. Took physics, which probably helped a lot. Physics and computer science. I'd say that was the so first of all, just like having a father who could always answer questions, and I probably got a lot of his curiosity. Not as much for physical things. He was, as a kid, he'd just take apart a toaster and put it back together in the afternoon for fun, to figure out how it worked. I was never that physical side of it, but yeah, my books growing up were encyclopedias of science and like how the world works and the things like that. So much more on the macro side and the intellectual piece. Um, but that's a big one. And then going to university, taking engineering course, well, like taking an engineering path, like getting a degree there, was probably the biggest piece of then how to foster it and keep that going. Breaking problems down, breaking very complicated problems down to into a series of discrete parts is definitely the way to approach big, hairy problems. Because otherwise, you just don't know where to start and you start chipping away at it. Like I heard it described from an engineering mentor of mine one time is you get tasked with mowing the lawn, you just get the lawnmower and do it. You have to mow 100,000 lawns. Okay, time to hit the drawing board, time to figure out what this looks like. You don't just start mowing lawns. You're 10 in, the other one's already grown back, and you got to have lunch. So approach big problems in by breaking it down to a series of steps, and this works for anything. So I'd say engineering mindset, massive.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic. I love that. And I think breaking larger tasks down into smaller subcomponents is a great way of approaching life in general. So you went down the engineering path, which, again, coming from your background, is not surprising. So what happened with that path in your life? Are you still an engineer? Are you still doing it? Did you do anything with that? What's the story?
No, I coded for about 6 months until I realized software is a unforgiving mistress. That it's just very difficult to. I didn't enjoy it for many reasons, but I did not enjoy it. But I took that into everything else I've done. Ending up creating a marketing automation company, and that worked very well. Was able to sell that and take a motorcycle trip from Vancouver to Argentina. Met a girl along the way. Ended up getting married. We're living in Venice Beach now, and when the whole way going down, I was just focusing on like efficiency and understanding the world, like I was saying before. And when we moved in together, I actually realized how she spent a lot of her time, which is she's a coach as well, and she wasn't necessarily spending her time on the like the optimal things, nor the things that she wanted to do when she started coaching. So we started working together and putting on an engineering mindset to her problem of like, I want to spend my time doing this, but I have to do this as part of running my business. I'm like, okay, cool, new problem, let's go. And I just figured out there was a series of steps and systems and people that would achieve the outcome of her doing what she liked and less of what she didn't like. And through that, I was able to, help her. And we live in Venice Beach, California. Every third or fourth person's also coaching here. And I was also able to then help them. And I built them a very similar process and essentially like noticed the pattern of, hey, here's a consistent problem that I'm good at solving through breaking down and figuring out where to spend your time. And that kind of created itself into my business now. And it's a beautiful transition of how I can help my wife get good results and use my skill sets into a business.
That's fascinating. And it all started with this motorcycle trip from Vancouver to Argentina. So what was the impetus for that? What made you want to do that?
Yeah, so I'm not sure if you've watched the movie The Motorcycle Diaries or read the book.
No, I've not. I've heard of it, but
It's
I've
just,
not watched it.
yeah, it's a real story about a young Che Guevara before he was political, but got into he was just a med school student, which you, I think, were one day as well. And he was with a colleague and a classmate, and they just decided to go on this big motorcycle trip around South America. And this, this piece of crap, like old junker motorcycle. They were both dirt bags, had no money, and had to find ways to get fed and fix the bike and fuel it up along the way. And they really had a great trip. It's a great movie. Definitely recommend it. And I remember seeing that, and I was like, I should do that someday. That would be fun. I've never ridden a motorcycle, done some traveling, but like it just was always a maybe. And in 2021, I was with my business coach at the spa and with my journal asking myself the kind of existential questions that one does at the spa. Uh, and like, what should I be doing that I'm not doing? What am I doing that I shouldn't be? How are things going? What makes me happy? What makes me sad? And I was kind of pulling every thread, and everything led to like, you got to do this trip, and you got to do it now. It's never going to be easier. Time to do it. And it was kind of funny because it wasn't on my mind that much, but it just the idea never went away. And then at that spot, I just went face to face with the reality that could be and the reality that you're at, and just understanding that there's a mismatch, and unless action is taken, you won't get there. And coming face to face with that, I rose to the occasion and just said, "This is happening." So I waited 24 hours. Still was the answer. And I told my business partner, I'm selling you this business. I'm gonna systemize myself out of a job, and you're gonna buy me out here. And that actually, the process of systemizing myself out of a job was incredibly useful to what I'm doing now, because that's what I help other people do in a way. So that process was very, very helpful, and also something I probably could have done earlier anyway. But that's all to say. Um, that's the impetus of it. Figured out that it had to happen. I actually like didn't know how to ride a motorcycle at the time, but I decided I was leaving in 3 months. So I had a bunch of stuff to do before I left. Um, I had a goal of doing a triathlon by an Ironman by the time I'm 30. And I was training for one, but the timeline just got compressed by a year. So hit the training hard. Um, did the Ironman before I left. Actually, there was no races scheduled because it was COVID, so I had to do it myself. I just set aside a day and made a path, and 14 hours later, there I was. Um, Took a motorcycle course, bought a motorcycle, did some adventures, figured out how to change a tire, all that stuff. 3 months was not as much time to accomplish all this, so got that, and then got going. People are like, "Why are you traveling during a pandemic? Why are you doing all these things? Like, what's Spencer? What's happening?" But I knew it was the right decision, and in retrospect, it definitely was.
Yeah, that's awesome. Actually, that was my other question to you. Are you a motorcycle rider? So you saying you weren't, but you're like, you know, what, I'm going to do this. I'm going to have to figure out a way to make it happen. Is
Yeah.
awesome, and I
Funny,
love
funny
that
story.
because
Actually, yeah. Yeah,
no,
no,
go ahead, go
actually,
ahead.
on that side, I actually did the whole trip on a learner's permit because I would have had to wait another month to leave to get my full license. So I just had my learner's permit. Thankfully, like in the Spanish police, in South America, Latin America, they couldn't read, so like the English side of it. So like the big learner's permit, it didn't matter too much. But yeah, I was like I had a barely even a license to get through it. But that's just kind of a good lesson of like do it before you think you're ready, and like it's just it's just the government saying whether like my skill is my skill, and the license is the license. So although my skill was low, but anyway,
But
start before
yeah,
you're ready.
right. No, but even here's the thing: is I mean, I think what you're saying with the license there is so true. I mean, I know plenty of people who have certificates and licenses and whatnot who are absolute garbage at what they do, and yet there's people who don't have a license or certification yet, who are absolutely stunning at doing the same task. So just because the government says you can or cannot doesn't really mean that you truly can or cannot do something, and I think that's important because so many people, myself included, for the longest time, have been chasing certificates and diplomas and all these achievements that really never aligned with my purpose. And that's really one of the fallacies in life. And I think, to your point, just doing it and getting the experience will ultimately make you a much better motorcycle rider, much better, whatever you're good at, than trying to study books and learning and never actually getting the practical experience with it. So I love that. That's fantastic. How many miles did you actually drive on this trip? And what
Oh
happened to the
goodness.
bike at the end?
There's a story in each of these. It's about 15,000 miles. It's tough to actually quote because it wasn't linear. I was doing whatever I wanted to do for a town, but airing south as I went on. I'd say about 15,000 or so, give or take. I actually got in an accident when I was in LA with my first motorcycle, and I ended up crashing it. And that's actually how I got to know my wife pretty well, is because she let me stay at her house while we just went on 2 dates before. So our third date was me living with her for a month while I fixed my motorcycle here. But the so that bike is actually still being fixed. There's a mechanic who's taking his time, but um, I ended up buying a new bike, and that's, so I lost my wallet. So I was taking out cash. It's tough to get cash as a foreigner in like thousands of dollars, because ATMs have certain limits, and there's no bank I can go to because Canadian banks are different. But so I had about $5,000 in cash and hit my daily max, and I lost my wallet with all the cash in it and my cards and everything when I was trying to buy a new bike, and ending up only having one card, and I couldn't log into my online banking because if I logged in, it would have said you need to replace it. So I had one card and a $18,000 credit limit in Canadian dollars. And so nobody would take my card as a private individual to trade me a motorcycle for. So I had to go to a shop, buy on credit, and like hope. But I had a place I was going to go to in Mexico, Tulum. So I said that, Mom, I'm gonna send the card to your place, the replacement card. You mail it to Tulum, and I'll pick it up in Tulum and then switch out the cards. So I had this like blind line of credit for his credit card that just kept on working, and I had to hope it worked until I got to Mexico, and then it ended up working out. But that was one funny piece of the puzzle. What happened to the motorcycle? So I went to the end of the world with it, the new one that I bought on credit, and went to the end, uh, flew it back to Miami. So I would have sold it in Argentina because I was done with it. But Argentina's got very strict protectionist laws. It's actually hard to get foreign things into the country and sell it. They want to foster economic development within the country. It hasn't worked out so well for them, but law's the law, and I'm just a guy on a bike. So had to fly to Miami, which is substantially closer to Buenos Aires than LA. And then I took the whole I-10 all the way from Florida to California, and made it back to my girl in LA. And like, yeah, that's where the bike ended up.
back in LA. So did you do the trip in the US then on the bike as well after you came back?
Yep, yep.
Oh,
So
that's
I
awesome.
rode my motorcycle from Miami to LA, and then that was
Wow.
the last hurrah.
Yeah, that's wild. How long did this whole trip take you?
8 months total. One of them was in LA fixing up my bike. Another was in Colombia because I just fell in love with the country. But 8 months total. One can do it quicker, one can take more time. I think it's 8 months is a good amount.
That's wild. So obviously I have to ask. So you crossed, continents, countries, you met all sorts of people along the way. What really did you learn about human beings on this trip?
I think I confirmed something that I already knew, which is that people are nice. I think you go to every country and somebody comes back and say, "Oh, the people in this country are so nice." People are just good. I ultimately believe that. I only felt in danger once in the entire trip, and there was many days and many situations that in every country people are like, "Why would you go there? Why would you go there? That's scary." I didn't feel any of that. So don't let people tell you the world's a scary place. The world's a very happy and loving and exciting place. And I kind of realized this idea that I can do anything. Um, and I don't feel like that's arrogant to say, but like I feel like anything's possible if you just put enough mind and effort into it. Like it's a crazy idea. Like I'm gonna go to the end of the world in Argentina, like the southernmost tip in the world. I'm gonna go there on this two-wheeled motorcycle. Like that's insane. But with enough time and effort and willpower, it'll happen eventually. So the realization that I can and anything's possible.
Yeah, no, I love that. I love that. Especially your conclusion that people are nice. I think that's beautiful. That's remarkable. So you come back from this trip. How did you end up in coaching? Like, what was that transition like? You had a business beforehand. You had that engineering degree. Now you go on this incredible motorcycle journey. You come back and you get into coaching. How did that work?
It was a really beautiful like turn of events. You know how it makes sense when you look back, but not when you're doing it in the moment. Um, my wife is a coach and successful at it, and I just when I moved in with her when I got back, I just saw her day to day was not as much coaching as she wanted, and more like running the business, doing certain admin tasks, editing things, making content, emails and payments and software, like none of which are her necessarily a zone of genius nor like things that light her up. But they have to happen. Like you got to get paid, you got to communicate with people, you got to schedule, you got to get the word out. It just has to happen. I don't want to do it. But me, like having run a marketing agency, having managed a team of 15, having built out all these things before in multiple of my different entrepreneurial ventures, I just kind of had done it and I just saw the path. So I was just able to identify that with her quicker and then put my engineering hat on and determine the series of systems and steps and things that would contribute to her producing the outcome that she wanted, which is maximizing coaching time, maximizing income, minimizing busy work. So okay, cool. Now I got a thing to work on, right? As everyone does, once you have a thing to work on, you can get, and you're excited to do it. You can get working on it, and happy wife, happy life. Helping her is a good thing as well. So everything lined up. So I did that with her, and then, like I said, a lot of our friends in Venice also coach. So a couple of them were like, "I want what Meredith has." So I worked with them and pattern matched. Like I built them almost the same things. I realized I had almost the same problems. I also just did 20 market research interviews, which were very like I love the market research interview process. It's actually something I do with every single client that comes to me. It's so important to identify a group of people that you can help, figure out the problems that they have, and then create a solution to that problem that you can repeatedly do for people that you're good at. So that's what I did. That's what I recommend everybody does when they're starting out any new service. And I just determined that the biggest problems were that coaches were doing it all themselves. There's a lot of work to be done. Not all of it's coaching. And there should be an efficient way to accomplish that work that's not just the founder doing everything. So with that equipping of like what needs to happen, what's the problem, and my skill set of systemization and operations, then hit the ground with that. Um, and the rest is history, as they say. But that's the process.
Yeah. No, and you definitely hit upon something very important. Building a coaching business is hard work. Because the space is so crowded, how do you stand out? How do you get people to recognize that you even exist, and what skill sets you have, and how you can help other people? Right? I mean, that's what we all try to do at the end of the day, is trying to get our voices heard so that people know that we're here and we're able to help. I mean, like you said, in your area in Venice, only it's crowded, right? It's physically crowded because they're all living in the same place, right? Yeah, and it's the same thing online. So how do you stand out? How do you make yourself known that you are available as a coach to be hired? And so having someone like you on the side to help build out some of those systems, to take some of the load off, because at the end of the day, when we go to life coaching school, those are not the tools that we get to learn, right? We get to learn how to help people, but we what we don't really learn is right. We know how to coach, but we don't know how to build a business, right? I mean, that's one of the things. I love Lumia for what it's done for me and the life coaching that I've received, and the training I received. But really, on how to build your business, it's lacking, right? I mean, but that's not what the system is designed for. That's not what the school's designed for. The school's designed to teach me how to be a coach, not how to run a coaching business. So that's fantastic. So your clients, by and large, are other coaches who are looking to make their non-coaching piece of their life more efficient.
Correct. Well, I mean, my clients want to have more, like, it's the coaches in general. They want to have more impact. They want to be able to help people more. They are generally very competent at helping people. If you get somebody on a call who's paid the money to solve a specific problem, they can do it, and they can do a very good job at it, and it makes them happy to do that. The problem is that it's a very busy space. It's often tough to decide on what problem you help them with. And with so many variables in place, like there's a thousand pieces that have to go together in order to have an effective growing coaching business. So where to start? And that's when it just goes back to the basics of like learning how to learning how to think about it. The main In terms of how to differentiate yourself, the main shift that happens, like I've seen my clients really level up from, is going from I get like charging for their time, trading time for money, into trading money for solving a problem. So instead of like I am a coach and this is how many sessions you get for this much money, and there's a this month minimum, and like framing the offer around that, it's not a winning formula because it's tough to differentiate your time from other people's time. What is very effective is positioning yourself as somebody who solves a specific problem for a specific group of people and then being paid to solve that problem. Because at that point in time, they're not making a decision. Like if somebody wants to work with you and they fit within that group of people and they do have that problem, they're making a decision is the price that this person is charging less than than the cost of this problem happening? And that's a much better decision making framework for a lead to make than is this person's time worth $500 per hour? And aligning that makes everything else easier.
Yeah, and I think your point there is that's really important, and I've had that discussion with other coaches a few times now. That especially other coaches in Lumia, for example, that have reached out. Hey, how do you price your coaching services? And the discussion, from my perspective, when I enter those discussions, always centers around that there's a difference between price and value. As long as people perceive your value to be greater than the price that you charge, they're going to sign on to you. But you can't equate price and value because they're different perspectives. Price is what you pay, value is what you get, and in getting people to recognize that and understand that is important. So I love that you take that perspective.
Yeah,
So
exactly. When value is completely perceived as well.
Right. No, exactly. Absolutely. Right. We all have our different lives and our different problems and our challenges. And so we may have a different value that we put onto what we get out of a certain program. And then, the price is, that's for the most part, let's say set in stone. But again, price is what you pay, value is what you get. So that's very much dependent on your perception of your own problem. Right. So you're right about that. So what does your program look like? Like, what do you do? How do you help your clients? What do they get out of that? Let's talk about the value they get from you.
Yep. Yep. So they get pretty much coaching business in a box. They've got all the systems to create their offer, price it effectively, solve a problem, get consistent results. So we start with the offer piece of it. We work on the strategy as well. So exactly like how do you think about it? And this is my favorite part, honestly, which is really figuring out like how to help my clients think strategically about what they need to do. There's a very, and I'll take a like I'll take a pause on the actual what I do to explain a very important piece. Like I think more people should be talking about, but it's called the law of constraints, and it's how to determine what you should do in your business. The law is that a business will grow up until its largest constraint, at which point it will stop until you remove the constraint. And the way to apply that is every single minute of your free time working on the business. There's working in the business, there's coaching, there's writing things, there's getting the word out. There's working in the business. If you're working on the business, you must be removing constraints. If you're not removing your biggest constraint, you are not working on your business effectively. Okay, how to determine your biggest constraint? That's the question. So when it comes to that, I'll just lay out the path that all coaches have, all solopreneurs have, most businesses in general have. But here's the first five constraints, and you'll know which one you're at. The first constraint is the offer. So generally, people are not charging enough for their services, and they're not solving a specific problem well enough. So the first piece is an offer. You need to solve one problem in one way for one group of people. Don't ask, hey, what do you want to work on today? Hey, what are your biggest problems right now? Like, hey, like you need to solve one specific problem, and people come at you and pay you for that problem, and you price it effectively. And then you need to have a step-by-step process for doing that. Like you need to have a way that if you come to me with this problem, I'm 100% sure I can solve that for you because I'm the best person in the world at solving this problem. All I do, right? Work on your offer, price it effectively. It should be within like $5,000 to $50,000 or so if you're doing high ticket coaching or consulting, but depends on the business type. Offer number one constraint. Second is discovery meetings. So that's going to be you should be having like 1 to 5 per week, depending on how big you want to get. Like if you want to do 100K a month, you need about 15, 20, but depending on what you want to be. Um, Way to implement it though is if you have a person who's just starting up the coaching business, I hear this all the time, but they're working on their website, they're working on their logo, they're working on their brand. Like, why are you doing that? If you sell your time at $50 an hour, why do you want more leads? You don't Getting more clients will only achieve you being busy and not paid enough still. And you're gonna have different results in this. So like applying the law of constraints, if you're just starting out and you're working on anything that's a marketing activity, you're doing the wrong thing because you haven't created an offer that's valuable enough and scalable enough to work on the marketing piece for. And this is something I'm very passionate about. Maybe it's coming out, but like, don't work on SEO. It's a waste of time until you've got an offer that's scalable and you're getting enough meetings to fill up your calendar. Like, wrong activity. Um, Offer, marketing, then it's usually a sales piece. Often, if you're closing less than 30% of your discovery calls, something's probably not optimal. Pieces to work on there, but get better at sales. Then it's a fulfillment piece. So you're full. Okay, cool. You need to scale your fulfillment so you can work with more clients and get the result more consistently. That's usually a team activity. And then it's hiring a team to get yourself out of a job. So offer, marketing, sales, fulfillment, team. If you're at the offer section, don't be hiring a team. Don't be figuring out how to get all these systems in place. Make your offer valuable. So, um, anyway, that was a little aside. But that's the strategy piece I talk about. Is like how to frame your next activities to make sure you're doing the highest leverage ones. At that point in time, we work on the marketing aspect. So yeah, and then all I'm doing is following that set of steps, the set of constraints, working it through them with them. But yeah, let's get you discovery meetings. Let's automate your marketing systems. It's figuring out your positioning. And after you've got the offer set, it actually kind of falls into place. So again, that work on the offers work very well done. But once you've got how you work with people done, what problem do you solve? Who do you work with? The marketing materials really just present themselves because you can just talk about the problems you solve to people, like present a very, very narrow solution that you have as part of your process. And that's a content piece right there. So start talking about that. Work on sales, work on process, work on team. But ultimately, like the biggest levers and the part that are going to get them the quickest is work on your offer, make it better, and then work on strategy so you're working on the right things.
Yeah, that's awesome. I love that, and I think you're so spot on. I mean, I think if you don't have a good offer, um, everything else almost doesn't matter. So, how long does that usually take for you to go from A to Z with a client?
I've been very hands on for the first bit. For the first 6 months of my business or so, I was working on my process a lot. I knew exactly what the steps didn't change, but just working on exactly what are the hangups, what do I really need to be there for, what pieces am I just like saying the same thing every time, and I can put this into a program or a PDF or whatever. So I was able to really determine what needs to be in place, and I've been able to create that into like much more of a like side by side situation versus like we're going to do everything with you. So right now it's more self-paced, and oftentimes people have completed within 2 or 3 months. Like for example, I just graduated a client. He was working a full-time job, and I actually got him out of a job because he was making about 200K a year, and now he's replaced that with his coaching income. So super happy for him. He was able to complete the entire program working a full-time job in 2 months.
Gotcha. That's awesome. The other thought I just had, I had a conversation with Arndt Hadenbrock a few weeks ago, and he's also in Lumia. He came from an executive background, and when he first started coaching, he thought that was going to be the space he needed to be in, but he realized that he almost knew too much in that space, and he didn't feel like he could be a good coach based on ICF standards for life coaching. And so he really is happier as a general life coach, going more with the ICF standards of, well, what problem do you want to talk about today? Well, how can we talk about this? How can we talk this through? So there's that dichotomy among coaches, right? There's the ones that solve very specific problems and command high prices, but then there's also the generalists that really solve a lot of big problems for humanity, but oftentimes I find undervalue themselves and are maybe even undervalued in the marketplace as a result. So how do you deal with those people that maybe don't have a specific problem or a specific offer to solve because they are happy to be generalized life coaches and they really just want to deal with human beings as they come?
It's making your life harder, definitely. If you people who don't want to commit to a certain area to help, those people have a harder time differentiating themselves. Because at that point in time, you are selling your time. Ultimately, if you are a generalist life coach who talks about whatever the client wants to talk about every time they get on the meeting, then you're selling your time one on one with them. And that's very difficult to talk about in a unique way, which differentiate yourself. You can make a very good income from that. I've got a few clients who just do it in that way, where they say they charge a lot per hour, they have a 12-month commitment, it's $20,000. People work with them, and it's a good, you know, they're happy with how much they get paid. However, you're ultimately commoditizing your time because you're not making it any different than anyone else's time who would also be a good life coach. So makes it tougher. Um, Certainly a path to go down. I haven't seen as much success with the clients who want to do it that way. Some have done it, but it's ultimately making your life harder. So make your choices.
Yeah, no, and it's obviously all about choices. And like I said, I mean, there aren't as someone who I think could command a lot of value in, let's say, an executive leadership role where he has experience, but he really has come to enjoy the life coaching aspect of it, really dealing with people who he doesn't know anything about. Coming back to the curiosity that we spoke about earlier, he really likes being curious about other people that have a different life experience and different problems that he really knows nothing about. And he really enjoys that aspect. And I know there's a lot of people like him out there who really do that, and I think they do some fantastic work. I mean, we need these people out there for people, but that's the problem is they do undervalue themselves, and they're definitely undervalued in the marketplace as well because they don't solve that specific problem, like you mentioned.
Well, it's tough to, yeah. Mhm. It's difficult, I think, to really, if you are doing if you want to be a generalist, I think you're going to have to become comfortable with other people solving every problem that you solve better. So if you solve 5 different things, or you solve every different thing, there's probably someone in the world to solve anything that you do better than you do. And if you want to, right, just because that's all they do, that's all they work on. Like it's unreasonable for you to solve every problem better than every person. It is totally reasonable for you to solve one problem better than anyone else. So if you do want to focus on just sitting down with people, listening to them, helping them get through what's in their way, get through blockages, that's fine. But I think you need to come to terms with the fact that you're not going to be as good at doing that as other people are when it comes to solving people's specific problems. And And it's not an either or either. You can definitely frame what you do around, I help people become more confident, for example. Just totally an example. But like the biggest problem I see within people I talk to is that they're not confident. And I can help them become more confident. And that's a very long journey. But you can probably create like 5 or 6 things that people need to do in order to become confident and have different checkpoints and have a framework that you approach it with and have a process to achieve those things. And then you're kind of getting into the realm of like, I help people solve a specific problem anyway. So it's not like an either or, but I think it might be intellect. It might be like in a bit like uh, I believe it's a missed opportunity to not actually focus on having a process for solving a problem, because at that point in time, your impact in the world is just going to be as many times as you can sit down and have an hour with somebody to help them out. Like, wouldn't you want to have a process that lives beyond you and solves problems for people at scale? And I don't know. Yeah, I think it's a tougher thing to do, but I'm happy that people are doing it well because that's ultimately their goal is to be able to coach people and help them. So if they're achieving that, then good for them.
Right. I think to your point, what I was just thinking about, I come from a medicine world. I used to be a trauma surgeon, and there too, the generalists don't make as much money as the specialists because as a specialist, you have more training and you command a higher salary as a result of that. But what the flip side of that is too is sometimes the clients that we serve simply can't afford the higher price tags of these specialists. So the generalists maybe aren't as good as that specialist. Maybe they are. Some of them probably are, but maybe you don't have all the nuanced details because that's a problem you don't deal with every day. But you are the affordable choice, and you can still help that client. Now, will it take longer? Will you have all the tools? Maybe not. It's also what can people afford on the other hand of the other side of things as well. That's important. So if everybody was a high ticket coach, there's going to be a large chunk of the population we're going to exclude because they simply can't afford our price tags. And I think for some of those people who do need coaches, I think the generalists are still an important tool. I'm just wondering, is there some way to maybe position them in a better place? But like you said, it's hard because if everybody's a generalist, how do you stand out, right? How do you make people become aware that you are probably the right person for them? And that's the hard part as coaches. On the topic of standing out, on the topic of trying to get to know each other, I want to ask you a couple questions. I wrote a networking book a few months ago that is kind of upended my life. It kind of blew up on LinkedIn over a weekend, and I think it's a great tool for introverts to get to network. A lot of icebreaker questions and who really trying to get at the essence of who someone is. So I want to ask you just a couple of questions out of that to figure out who Spencer Cox is. Um, so we'll start with a simple question. What is your favorite holiday and why?
Favorite holiday. Christmas is fun. That's definitely a contender. Um, yeah, Christmas. That's an easy. It's an easy layup. Christmas is the fun one. It's when family comes together. It's when, in Canada you got snow and you can go and ski and you can play hockey outside and it's a beautiful time of year.
I agree. Do you have any kids?
No kids,
No kids.
plans,
Uh,
but we've got another year or so.
yeah, no, that's perfectly fine. The reason I'm asking is, I Christmas to me was always special as a child, and when I in my young adulthood, when it was just me, it kind of just lost its luster, and it really has taken on a very different and very special meaning now that I have kids and being able to see Christmas again through my kids' eyes. It's really brought the magic of Christmas back in a way, and so I can totally relate to that. It brings family together. But you brought up another interesting point that I think is going to influence my next question. So you come from Canada, you're in LA, you did this massive road trip on a motorcycle. So would you rather take a cold shower on a hot day or a hot bath on a cold day?
Cold shower on a hot day. I like the cold. Do you do cold exposure or do you do any of those things?
Yeah, I do. For the most part, right now, I do cold showers. I don't have access to an ice bath right now, but yeah, I do. I do like cold showers.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. I'm in the same boat. I'm gonna take that cold little thing. It gets hot in LA, and as a Canadian, it's uncomfortable sometimes. So I'll take a nice shower. My shower actually takes about a minute to heat up, like just the way the piping's hooked up. It takes about 60 seconds or so for the water to go from cold to be able to access the hot pipe. Um, and sometimes I'm just like, I just want to do it. So I'll just hop in the shower and make it cold. Um, and it's not a bad thing. It's good for discipline, good for mental fortitude. So I definitely take the hot one. What do people usually answer that one?
It's been a variety of things. I mean, some people really like baths, and so they choose the hot bath on a cold day, and some people don't like the heat, and they use the cold shower. That question really has been a little bit all over the place. Now, here's my favorite question of all, and I'm really curious to hear your response. Would you rather have a cat that barks or a dog that meows?
I prefer dogs, so that's I just have a rather have a dog that does almost anything. Um, a cat that barks. Also, meowing is more quiet, so I'd rather have the quieter one. Both both contribute to the dog piece.
Definitely, definitely odd. It's an odd question, but it's just been a favorite dichotomy that I've been trying to throw out at people. Now, here's the other thing that I started doing a while ago. Now is I always have each guest ask the next guest a question, not knowing who that guest is or when we're going to record. So your question comes from Evan Sukman, who would like to know if you could go back in time and give your 18-year-old self one piece of advice, and there's only one piece of advice that you can give your 18-year-old self, but that 18-year-old self will completely internalize it and run with it. What would that one piece of advice be to your 18-year-old self?
That's a good one. I'm trying to just form the words of it. I know the angle, but it's going to be something around like aggressively pursue your passion. Um, yeah, it's going to be like be very clear at all points in time on the world that you want to live within, and aggressively pursue and take action upon the series of steps which will create that world for you. Oh, and also unapologetically. Unapologetically is adding in there too.
Yes. No, I love that. So unapologetically and aggressively pursue your passions. That's
And
beautiful.
know what that, yeah, pursue the world that have a very good definition and clarity on the world which you want for you, and unapologetically and aggressively take the actions that will create that world.
I love that.
And if I was doing that at 18, holy cow. Um,
Right?
I'm very happy. I'm very happy I'm doing that now. However, 18-year-old me could definitely use that advice. He'd be playing fewer video games and spending less time chasing uh, girls and going out and doing more stuff that's gonna make the me right now and the me when I'm 80 a better person.
Yeah, no doubt, no doubt. I think I totally relate to that. Well, listen, Spencer, it's your time to pay it forward. What question would you like to ask the next guest, not knowing who they are, what they do, or even when I'm going to record that conversation with them?
Yeah, I'll take the Warren Buffett question of would you rather be the worst lover in the world and people think you're the best, or the best lover in the world and people think you're the worst?
All right. That's a great one. I love that. That's awesome. So, this was awesome. You have so much awesome stuff to share with the world. Where can people reach out to you? How can they connect with you?
You can find me on LinkedIn. I'm Spencer Cox. I'll be the one with the face talking about coaching. So that's me. You can find me on Instagram, Strategic Spence. I'm doing a bit more of that this year, as I mentioned. And you can reach out to me at spencer@coachos.co. I like talking about how to grow people's businesses, and I've been really excited about working on everything. Or if you just want to reach out and talk about mental models and systems and strategy, this is a very big, confusing world, and I enjoy having insightful conversations with people who can help simplify it with me.
Yeah, that's fantastic. That's awesome. I'll make sure all the links to your websites and online profiles are in the description below so people can find it easily and connect with you if they so desire. Spencer, any last words to the world from you?
No, appreciate putting this on, Felix. This has been a lot of fun. You're a very good conversationalist. I think that this will be a very exciting podcast to follow along with. You got a new subscriber.
Yeah, that's awesome. I love that. No, thank you for being here. I truly, I can't tell you how much fun I've been having with these conversations, getting to meet awesome people like you who are doing some incredible work out there in the world. And like you said, people are nice, right? You're just sharing the love and making the world a better place. So I have really have to thank you for joining me on this journey and coming on honest, truly, man. So thank you. All right, I really hope you enjoyed that. The questions that I asked towards the end are from my new book, The Simple Networking Tool. It's a great book that redefines how we network. It's all about who someone is and not what they are. So if you want to get your own book, it's available on Amazon. If you want to learn more, there's videos about it here on YouTube. So you can check out this amazing new social science experiment. I'm so excited for it. If you do get a book and you do start your own, please let me know how it goes and what your experience is like. I'm working on the second edition and I want to make it the best one yet. So be sure to tag me, let me know how it goes. Thanks for watching.